All right, welcome to Grown Folks Business. Tonight, I think we did something special without intentionally meaning to do so because tonight's topic, I believe, requires some generational bridging. Yeah, thanks, Celeste, for coming in here and providing that because as an old guy and Bob is an older guy, I'm not necessarily understanding of what we've become culturally. And if you didn't get the flyer, tonight's topic is what is cancel culture and what good does it serve? So, cancel culture is relatively new to me. It's something to witness and behold, to see people uh, receive this public scrutiny and outrage that kind of can cost them opportunities, career growth, and just earn them the scorn of public. I'm reminded of that book, and I think it became a play in a movie, The Scarlet Letter. The shamefulness that can come with being ostracized in the greater community. So tonight, that's what we'll be discussing. And again, I never know who may or may not show up, and I'm just glad that Celeste made it because she does provide a 20-something perspective. And I think that's critically important. I don't think there's any reason we should not be in communication with each other and be learning in every direction. I don't think uh, wisdom, as we talked about last week, Jay Dwayne and I, is just the within the death grip of older people. It is something that traverses and bounces around. And I believe someone younger can be wiser than someone older. So thanks for being here, Celeste. You changed my whole energy around how I would open tonight because I think you probably know a lot more about this cancel culture thing than we do. The get off my lawn guys. So yeah, we're gonna we're gonna start there with that appreciation. So, what is cancel culture and what good does it serve? I'm going to tap on the wise young lady to define cancel culture for us, and we'll begin there, and then Bob can give his idea and understanding of it, and we'll just rock and roll. So, Celeste, what is cancel culture? What good does it serve?
So, cancel culture is the act of getting rid of somebody from mainstream culture. But I also want to say that cancel culture is something that came from having a direct economic impact on individuals perceived at a higher status or a higher level of notoriety than the average person. Like, for example, R. Kelly in the 90s, early 2000s, after the video of him and the girl came out, people tried to cancel R. Kelly, but they couldn't have the direct economic impact on him that streaming has on him in the late, in the not even late, more progressed 21st century, getting into the 2020s and the late 20 teens. Album sales and like the level that social media is now was only an idea. Like Facebook didn't even exist in the early 2000s yet. So cancel culture is something that came from being able to have direct socioeconomic impact on somebody, like disrupting your album sales, your ticket sales, your concert sales. Nothing hurts more than being shamed on Twitter. And being shamed on Twitter can kill any type of notoriety, or I don't even know what you want to call R. Kelly's career, because yes, the man is talented, but he's also a menace to society. And that being able to be put out there on over his talents, like oversaturating the market with what he's bad for versus what he's good for, basically canceled him. Donald Trump is the only person I know that has been able to defeat cancel culture. And that's because social media is something that's available to everybody. And he has not done something that is so just heinous to the average American that people necessarily want to cancel him. Another person that probably
Hold on, time out, because you jumping ahead. That's a question of mine. You get ready to answer the
okay.
whole question. Yeah, That's a good question that I'm going to wait to get to, but it is who is uncancelable. And I think it's going to make for some good back and forth. Of course, I definitely agree with the first person you nominated for being uncancelable.
Beyonce.
But she doesn't do much controversial.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But even if she did, she's Beyonce.
So I think, and I will go ahead there a little bit, but then we'll get back on track because I want to hear Bob's response. And I also wanted you to unpack what good it serves, if any. And you brought up somebody who I think may be an example of the good that can be served by cancellation. And I love the way that you structured how it became a thing. Everybody's got a microphone now. Everybody's got a voice, and everybody's got a point of influence. And if you get enough concentrated in your direction, you can be canceled. But yeah, another person I'll say before we get further along, I think Will Smith deserved cancellation. I don't think he was ever really canceled. I don't count his. I don't feel like anything has happened in his career that is indicative of cancellation other than a comedy special that called him out for his actions, and it was by the person who called him out. Hold your thought. We're going to come back to you on that topic because you got more to say. That's why you're here. So what is good about it, Celeste, real quick before I get to Bob? What is good about
it? It gives people, just like we talk about how bad social media is because it puts so much fake news, bad news, things that just aren't even true out there, especially to an older generation that's not used to receiving news that's not accurate. Like my mother is 65. She doesn't understand that all news isn't good news because she grew up in a day where the news was telling you the truth. Like the news that used to come on at 6 o'clock, that was the truth. It was the only truth you were going to get. That generation and every generation that comes after, like, cancel culture is amazing because it gives everybody a chance to know like the things that might be shoved to the side. Like Elvis. Elvis had a thing for women under the age of 18. Like he met Lisa Marie when she was 14, 15, and he was on a military base in Germany. And that generation who might not have had a problem with it because it was a societal and cultural norm didn't know that. Chuck Berry had a thing for young white girls as well. People don't talk about that because they didn't know. Would they have supported him the same way if they knew? Black people because they were young white women, and white people because they were young white women, but we both understand those are in completely different contexts. So basically the stars that our parents, our grandparents supported and loved with all of that fever, I'm sorry, I cannot speak right now. With all of that love and adoration, fervor, thank you. Sorry, I've been writing law school briefs all day. But had they have known the truth about a lot of these men and women that was able to be put out there through social media nowadays, would they have supported them with the same love and adoration? Would you still love the stars of your generation had you have known the truth about them? Smokey Robinson recently talking about him and Diana Ross having an affair while he was with his first wife. Would women still have listened to him croon and swoon at the microphone if they would have known that he was technically an adulterer? Like these things, they probably would have impacted people's perception.
I would argue that, you know, we should never put people in a space or on a mantle of high expectations for some morality or some behavior that it's going to be acceptable to everyone. And I think the knowing was always there to some extent by those who knew, but yeah. it is now everybody has a microphone and everybody can have something to say that can steer someone's talents towards oblivion because somebody says, hey, you know, I don't like them that much anymore because of this, this, and this. But that's not necessarily what they're here for. They're not here to be liked by everyone. They may be here just to sing and dance, and that's all we need to be concerned about. That's just
before we get to Bob, you're saying everybody has a microphone. It's also everybody has a camera. You sneaking in and out of hotel rooms nowadays and sneaking in and out of hotels that you're not supposed to be at. Anthony Davis in the last Lakers game was walking through the tunnel, not in a wheelchair, and there were so many cell phone cameras in that man's face, they probably added to whatever concussion he could possibly have. Where everybody has a microphone, they also have a camera. So if you're doing something you're not supposed to do, eventually you're going to get called. Ask AJ Brown, the receiver for Tampa.
Yeah.
He messed up at that game where he quote unquote retired on the field. And next thing you know, there was a video on social media of him sneaking a girl into the team hotel the night before the game. She tested positive for COVID. It was an entire thing about should he even be in the NFL anymore. Everybody has a microphone. Everybody also got a camera on their phone.
Yeah, and that's, I think, it's more to our detriment. And that's arguable, debatable, but I think it is more to our detriment to be so judgmental. Human nature has been what human nature has been for a long time. And now everybody gets to judge. And I don't think that's a good thing, but we'll get further along. Bob, what is your definition of cancel culture and what good does it serve?
First of all, I have to say to Celeste that I'm one of that generation too, by the way, just for the record. And Felton, to your point about people being older and wiser, I think young people are wiser than old people. I think the only thing older people have is more living history. They've experienced more things in the real. Younger people who read a lot know a lot more than older people, but the older people have experienced more, and that's the only leg up they have. I think the whole wisdom thing's complete crock, and I think that that younger people are more vigorous, they're more optimistic, they're more all sorts of things that give us a better model for living. And I think older people that are the kind of older people that are refreshing as opposed to dreary are older people who spend a lot of time with younger people. So I just wanted to make that editorial comment.
Yeah, I want to put that in last week's show because that would have been apropos. But go ahead.
So you know, the counterculture thing, and Celeste is exactly right. Everybody's got you're both right. Everybody's got a microphone. Everybody's got a camera. And in some ways, I think that that's helpful because it helps build accountability more equitably. You know, a lot of the decisions and so forth that have been made in the courts in more recent years have only been made because somebody had a camera or somebody had a microphone. And so the more people can have voices and more people can have legitimate and valued voices because of those microphones and cameras. To the extent that they're used to intrude upon other people and that sort of thing unfairly, or when privacy should be there, you know, I think that obviously that's a negative, but that reflects something else. That reflects a nosiness and intrusiveness, an attitude of entitlement toward anybody's business is my business, and that's a completely different topic. I think that we can talk about some other evening. You know, back when Celeste's mother was watching the 6 o'clock news, that was truth. And the truth that was told, I think, was largely true. The thing back then was a lot of truth was left out. A lot of truth was not told. And so there was an upfront filter around things where it was an understood thing across the networks that we don't talk about this, we don't talk about that, we leave this private, we leave this private, and the idea that the news commentators then would be outrageous or be titillating or be anything that wasn't other than stoic and truth telling, they'd been fired. They wouldn't. That because that was the understood role and the understood style and the understood way. And was it written down somewhere? No. It's just it was the understood way of being appropriate. A word I don't particularly like.
Bob, I'm going to interject this, and you carry on with that understanding that you have even prior to me, because when I was a kid, I remember the Cronkite and the Dan Rather, and Merrill and I have had that discussion about, how authentic that presentation of news was, straight-laced, matter of fact, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that I think gave credence to it, gave credibility.
Right.
Whereas now it's got to be a hot take and it's got to be some form of controversy attached to it.
That's
and as you stated, I think they knew, or as you alluded to, I think they knew some of this stuff. It just wasn't for the public.
Yeah. I mean, the news people knew of John Kennedy's stuff and Lyndon Johnson's stuff, and the only reason what happened to Nixon was because of the criminal thing that came up. Criminal stuff was criminal stuff, but the other stuff was just kept quiet. It was kept out of the room. The notion of cancel culture, I'm going to split that into two different notions. One being the everyman aspect of counterculture and the effect of social media and that sort of thing. We have always, for centuries, there have always been behaviors or activities that would cause shunning or cause a loss of social status, or a this or that, based upon any number of things. It could be behavior, it could be addictions, it could be any number of things that where behaving in a particular way was always necessary to maintain your status or maintain your regard within the realm that you existed or the realms that mattered to you. And some people would choose to do what they would do and accept the consequence. Others would shape themselves to fit in within that. That's been a part of our culture, of cultures over the course of history, really forever. Today, the difference though is that then everybody knew what would take them out of the box and what would keep them in the box. Today it's random. Today it's trendy. Today it's today a person can do this and tomorrow do the same thing, and the outcome become completely different. And I think that I don't object to counterculture.
Cancel.
Counterculture is the coffee. Cancel culture from the perspective of just general people. You can decide to turn off whatever you want to turn off. You can decide to not invite to your house anybody you want to decide not to invite to your house. What frustrates me about cancel culture is where it's Fox News. Tucker Carlson was Tucker Carlson before Fox News paid a $780-some million fine. But he got canceled the day after or 2 days after or whatnot. I don't know what Don Lemon did. This pick and choose. 1 minute, these people can say all this crap that they want to about this collection of people. The minute they say it about that particular category of person, they're canceled. The randomness and the disingenuousness of that, the capitalist drivers behind that. Mm-hmm. As long as this particular offensive person is making money for the networks and getting more attention, he's good. The minute that's at risk, he's bad. But what's at risk, what makes that at risk today could be this. Tomorrow it could be that. And again, there's a randomness and there is a disingenuousness about it it's not cancel culture. There's other stuff driving that then it's and we label it cancel culture.
That's a great lead into what Celeste was mentioning earlier, and that question is just pointedly, who is uncancelable? I think absolutely there are those who don't have guardrails that apply, Bob, and that's what makes it a fluid situation. And we can sit back and observe somebody who can get away with anything and everything, say what they want, do what they want, act how they want, and there's no symmetry in terms of the reaction that another person can get for what some people might perceive as a minimal offense or something that's not as shocking or discombobulating. So, Celeste, who do you think is uncancelable and why? And just give me 2 or 3. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Honestly, Donald Trump was uncancelable until the base of the Republican Party realized that he could lose the Republican Party elections for the next 20 years. Once the base of the Republican Party realized that if Trump loses the primary to current big challenger Ron DeSantis, he'll drag the whole party down with him. That's the moment they became okay with canceling him. But at one point in time, Donald Trump was uncancelable. When the Access Hollywood video came out talking about grab women by their lady parts, when the payments that he had to make to Marla Maples and Ivana and all of them came out regarding his ex-wives and the affairs, Ivana Trump, I watched the interview, went on Wendy Williams, and Ivana spilled all the tea and the beans. She said, I'm going to let it all hang out today.
But I think he's still uncancelable. And I believe that not from a political standpoint, not his availability to a party, but societally. That's what cancellation is supposed to be about, from my understanding, right?
No, politically, I don't think he's uncancelable because he's such a big figure. He might never be president again, but getting his endorsement and having him go on the road for you will always be a bonus. But in culture, the reason I'm going to say he's cancelable in culture is because he'll never get his show back on NBC, more than likely. His reality shows are more than likely done. Nobody wants to see Trump Towers anymore. Like, the NBA no longer uses Trump Towers as a place to hold its players before games. It's weird because he was so embedded in mainstream culture that it would be so hard. Like, I grew up being a fan of the Donald. Like, you're fired, watching his gold toilets in Trump Towers, paying attention to Melania and her outfits. Terrible first lady, glamorous as all get out. Like, I loved it. The Louboutins, the Versace, the Valentino suits. Like, Melania served glamour, high class, all that stuff. Like, as a cultural icon, he's still relevant as long as he doesn't talk. Somebody else that I feel like is uncancelable, honestly, I don't know anybody in mainstream American culture that has achieved the level of just clout that the Donald has. LeBron James. Unless LeBron James has done something so awful and gut-wrenching that hasn't been found out yet, LeBron, I don't think, is going to do anything or can really do anything to get canceled. Now, if he's doing steroids behind closed doors, he's out of the GOAT conversation. No doubt about it.
I think Snoop Dogg is the person you're looking for. I think there's a jumping of the shark in terms of what you are societally. You embody some character, as I believe Donald Trump has, that people just believe that is you, lock, step, and barrel, and wholeheartedly, and you become a caricature that can just survive despite.
That's not
no
Snoop Dogg. The only reason I say that's not Snoop Dogg is because if Snoop Dogg started messing with white women, he'd be canceled in a day. Snoop Dogg.
He's perpetrated a mythology around being some sort of pimp. He survived that, and there were white women in those areas with him.
He has, but I'm saying if he started dating like Ariana Grande or a Kelly Clarkson, like somebody that is revered and looked up to in mainstream white American culture, he would be canceled because
What's black people. What about Martha?
Martha Stewart don't count because Martha Stewart been hanging out with the black men for the last 20 years. So people already know what Martha up to and how she get down. Don't nobody care about what Martha do. Martha be at the cookout and she will rap every word to Finito by Chief Keef right now and skip all the N words. And all the black people will celebrate her.
I have no idea what song that is. So
exactly.
Anyway.
If you go look up Chief Keef right now, you will figure out that as long as she skipped the N words, black people will dap her up. As long as she know Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mill, she cool.
And that's sad to me. So that means there's a low bar that you can step over.
Baby, so, the bar is in HE double hockey sticks.
It's low.
Yes.
Tell me this. Who's your third if you have one before we get to Bob? Do you have another?
I didn't even have a second. You gave me Snoop.
I'm giving you Jules here. So do you have another one?
No, I think those people are still cancelable. Their actions just aren't bad enough. Donald Trump can do anything, and I don't think that certain pieces of America that are large enough to have that impact will ever cancel him. Like being black, there's always something you can do to get canceled.
Yeah, the guardrails are different. But again, I would put Snoop in that category, Will Smith in that category. I believe
Will Smith did not do nothing wrong. We talked about this on the Grown Folks Business about that. Will Smith defended his wife. If
No. So let's really get this all the way cleared up as to why I believe he's uncancelable. Is because of who he decided to assault in a public arena in front of all of their peers, and the safest place for any celebrity to be was another black man. And that's more acceptable. We'll still get out the movie that you made. We'll still make more movies with you. We'll do all of those things because that's something acceptable in the realm of what cancel culture should have carried out for him. Now, I would also throw Dave Chappelle in the uncancelable category. But again, there's this performative art that becomes accepted as some type of normality and presents at opportune times a balance of the imbalance of what we can point and say is unacceptable behavior. And somebody says, wait a minute, there's something worth hearing there, which I think leads to another question I have, but we'll get to it. Bob, do you have...
We're going to come back to your statement because you said something and
give it to me one time real quick before I get to Bob.
When you're a black man, cancel culture starts with black women. If black women start to get on social media and say that a black man or another black woman is canceled, then you will have liberal white people that jump on it and the rest of white people will follow. Cancel culture a lot of times starts in the black community because even though we don't like to admit it as mainstream America, culture starts in the black community, and culture in the black community usually starts with black women. And Will Smith is not and will not get canceled for standing up and defending his black wife by black women.
You can't assign. So I'm gonna say this lastly, and then we're gonna move on. So you can't assign any level of defense of his wife in that setting. And no, he would. What Chris Rock did was in poor taste. Most comedians do that. What those people around him were doing, including some white women, were joking and laughing and having a good time. And he grinned and bared that. He laughed and joked with them on that notion of what his wife had did and put out for public consumption as far as her infidelity. You can't not excuse what he did to another black male in front of the world as some defense of his wife, when it's another thing to be considered is they all know each other.
I'm not saying that he wasn't wrong. I'm just saying that what he did wasn't going to get canceled by black women. Because the way that you're looking at it as a black man and the way I'm looking at it as a black woman, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying Will was right for how he handled it because smacking anybody in the face, you asking for a brawl on the stage. But as a black woman, I'm not going to sit up here and say he was wrong.
But my humanity supersedes all of that. It was dead wrong. And it was wrong on so many levels. It's not even debatable, in my opinion. We could talk about this another time. Maybe we revisit that show, but there's no way that there's any excuse in that behavior. Bob, who is, if you can think of anyone,
of course, after this,
come on.
To y'all, I can't leave that alone before I answer your question. I think Celeste is exactly right. I think black women if Black women have an influence on cancel culture, I think Black women applaud a Black man doing something, whether it is or isn't, but looks like defending his wife. I think that's a plus from a Black woman's perspective, without lifting the hood much higher or deeper or any of that kind of stuff. It's like Black women cannot feel that that's not something to applaud, at least in some level. Whether intellectually it's wrong, perceived as wrong or not, there's an emotional thing there, I think, that says, hey, that kind of felt good, that this guy stood up for his wife. And so I think she's right about that. Yeah, but in a bigger picture than that, I think Will Smith is a very beloved actor in general terms. And I think that most people would look at that and go, okay, that was wrong. That was bad, but we love Will. What's going on? What's wrong here? And aren't going to cancel him because they love him. And so it's the other thing that's distinctive, I think, about the Will Smith situation or the Dave Chappelle situation. Dave Chappelle would be canceled by the LGBTQ community, but he's not going to be canceled by the people that completely applaud what he says and hear him for what he means. So part of this whole cancel culture thing is really a function of who's your audience. And if you've got different segments of the audience, one segment can't cancel you out. The question is to what extent is your audience to what extent is 85% of your audience, 80% of your audience, maybe 75, but I'm going to say 80, 85. To what extent is 80 or 85% of your audience offended, turned off? If you go there, cancel. But as long as you're keeping segments of your audience, you can get rid of this. This segment might cancel you, that segment might cancel you, but the entirety of the segment will not. Trump's thing, and here's where I think we've got a huge potential issue. The Republican Party has a bigger issue than I think they actually realize, is there are so many people that will not cancel Donald Trump, including the media, that the Republican Party can cancel him all they want, and it's they're going to lose either way. They're going to lose either way. They're going to lose by keeping him inside. They're going to lose by canceling him. The Republican Party made a pact with the absolute devil when they made a pact with him. And they are, I'm not going to say it because it's grown folks' business, but I'm still not going to say it. They are royally, you know what I'm going to say. And so, because they did in fact make a pact with the most despicable living human being on this planet, and there are so many people though that will defend him until the death, and they may be believers in all of this as conspiracy theory. They may be believers in grabbing women by their personal parts is what guys are supposed to do. That's just being a guy. They may be believers in screwing people financially and taking advantage of your subcontractors is shrewd business. Pick it, whatever. They may be because they say, oh, he talks like we do. He doesn't talk like the guy that runs the corporations. He talks like we do, and we've been screwed by the corporations. So he's in our court too. I mean, there's all of this stuff, but he's got such a, the feminists could kick him out. The LGBTQ community could kick him out. This community could, that community. How many communities would have to kick him out in order for him to be canceled? And I think that's where the answer to the question about who's cancelable comes from. It's a matter of how diverse is your constituency. And how homogeneous is it?
I think that jumping of the shark plays a significant role because it limits some rational conclusions from being reached, because the popularity level and the acceptance level of certain individuals is so high that, again, you cannot just say, well, we're finally done with that person and we knew they were no good for us. There's always somebody who's saying, well, we need a something to happen this week so we can get a. Why would CNN platform him in that way? That's a part of that whole thing.
And think about all of the people that have been Trump affiliates over the course of the last 8 years that still can't get his sticky off of them.
Yeah.
I also want to point out Donald Trump has been able to stay in the media and stay in the Republican Party because 2016 to 2019, he built all of that.
That's right.
CNN got the highest ratings they've had in years off of covering him. Fox News got the highest rating that they've had in like 50 years off of covering him.
He can be shut out by everybody. The media is still going to bring him in because he's still going to get that,
the joke's eventually on you for participating and giving that platform.
What was that thing last night or the night before, town hall or whatever it was, on the heels of this stuff with this woman and the stuff with Fox News, and he still is on CNN front and center.
So you have to, like, I give that same credence to some celebrities who just ascend to heights and levels where no matter what they do, and Kanye flirted with it and he's not done yet. He'll reinvent and come back and be of some type of sort. But I think back to the Will Smith comment really quickly, what you said, Bob, he was a safer guy. He didn't do anything controversial. Everybody liked him. So here's this moment. We got to get past it. But Celeste, back to what you were mentioning about Black women. Chris Rock has a Black mother. That's not acceptable. And not every Black woman was celebrating that moment. They just weren't. And it was horrific for me as a Black man to witness an assault on another Black man on TV for the world to see. And it just be immediate. Well, he talking about his wife. Yeah, that's literally the jokes on you that night. That's what that setting is for.
Problematic phrase, but not that problematic. If society cared about Black manhood, then your feelings would be validated on a global and social media scale. But also when it comes to Black women, Bob was right. On a sentimental and like emotional level, yes, Will, because Black women don't get defended on international
stages. Not true.
Felton, wait. But then on a level of we know it's wrong, yes, we understood it was wrong. That's why Will Smith got the pop on the behind from Black women, but also how many Black men would be willing to stand up for us like that in real life? Like, okay, I love my Black man. I really do. But your wife is an attorney. Please don't go out here smacking nobody in the face for nothing, because I'm not trying to sit in front of a judge that I know and the Durham and Wake Bar Association and be like, yeah, y'all, that's my husband. He knows assault and battery is bad, but he was trying to defend me. No, don't do that, baby. Sit down somewhere. But also, on a sentimental level in my chest, Jada is a messed up individual, and I'm not defending her by any circumstances. But I am saying, just seeing a Black woman in that space when a lot of Black men who elevate to that level usually don't have Black wives, defend her publicly because she noted him that her feelings were hurt, that was a big deal for Black women. Like, for me, on one hand, I love Will Smith as an actor. So I was kind of sitting up there like, Chris Rock, you say a lot of douchey things, so you deserve to get popped for that. But like Dave Chappelle and Jerry Seinfeld are from the same era, and they say a lot of messed up stuff in general. So if Jerry Seinfeld and Dave Chappelle both got popped, if you pop Dave Chappelle, you'll have to fight for your life because that man is from the streets. He will cut you.
He's not from the streets. But anyway.
I thought he was, because he always talks about how he's from the streets in New York and Philadelphia and stuff. Yeah. But I'm also like, even though I know it's wrong to smack anybody, and my man better not do it, it was nice to see somebody defend their Black wife in a space where a lot of Black women aren't present. Like, you do realize that out of all the Black men in the audience, only like 3 of them had Black wives.
So
Denzel,
I mean,
Will
that
Smith.
when you get to that level of celebrity, we know that cuts both ways, and I'm not defending anybody. You at the end of the day, you love who you love, and for whatever reasons you with who you with. But I will give credence to this idea and this understanding that moment. I get where that energy can come from, but and that's the appreciation for the defense of a woman, a Black woman, especially on a national level, and I get it. But it's still highly problematic, and it should never have been something that, in my opinion, that we argued and debated about why it was okay that it happened. And that's the part I don't like. And it becomes less about her defense and more about what I have the most issue with, normalizing the malbehaviors of Black men upon one another, and that solidifies to somebody that, see, they can't even control themselves on that level.
I get what you're saying, but I want to also state that that's only okay because it was 2 Black men. A white man can never walk on a stage and slap a Black comedian for anything, because that will be probably the end of his career. If Tom Hanks would have got up and smacked Chris Rock in the face, we all know the slave owner used to slap his slave with an open palm. It signified you were nothing. Shannon Sharpe went on a rant about it when, I forgot who was, slapped somebody. Like, you cannot do that. Actually, it was Shannon Sharpe who went off about Will Smith. He said slave owners used to slap their slaves with an open hand to signify that they were nothing. So when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, it signified that he was lower than anything on this earth. A white man cannot get on stage and do that. I get what you're saying about 2 Black men, but there's a lot of levels to that situation and cancel culture that would take us hours upon hours to unpack, because that's a lot of psychology.
We definitely, I'm trying to keep us out of the ditch, but when we talk about this, it is worthy of unpacking, and I'm glad again to have you in the space to have the conversation with. Go ahead, Bob.
I just want to say what you just said about the impression about Black men fighting each other. I think that's spot on.
That was the man. If we ever go back to that show, maybe I'll get them to replay that one in the next couple of weeks. But that was my most. That makes your frustration about that makes complete sense to me, and I think you are spot on with the concern about that. Yeah. And that was reckless. That was very reckless of him.
I think that's important. That's
so. It was very reckless of him to do that on that level of exposure. And Celeste, I would even say that the not laughing at the joke, as most people do in those circumstances, is some form of defense in that setting. It just is. That's a comedian.
Will Smith laughed at the joke. That's why he had the overreaction.
All of that. Yes, Celeste. That's what made it all.
He had that overreaction to make up for the fact that he laughed at the joke too.
Because he was already laughing all night long with all of the other corny jokes that were going on.
That's why I said Jada had to signal him that she was upset. That's what I'm saying. I'm not defending Jada, but as a Black woman, it was nice to see his defense, even though his defense was after he had already laughed. That's why I said there's levels to the situation. It's not as simple. Like, Bob is completely right. 2 Black men fighting on a stage that's usually full of room of a bunch of white people who don't necessarily want Black people there. You're absolutely right. But Black men's validation and their feelings on an international and social media stage is not something that's going to be discussed. So while you're right, that was not a thought process that was happening on social media, because I'm on Twitter. I was on Twitter that night, and all anybody cared about on my page was that Will defended his wife, Jada's trash and nobody likes her, and Chris Rock says a whole bunch of stuff that he should have got popped in the face for a long time ago. Chris Rock's reputation also did not help him out that night, because people pulled up videos from the 90s where he had been talking about folks.
And also there's the reality, just the sheer reality of Will Smith and Jada in this relationship that's really not healthy. And reacting to whatever, doing. I mean, That's all. I don't need to say more.
Well, her show's finally canceled, which I didn't think it was serving a greater purpose anyway. So that's one
it got
cancellation
picked
I'm
up.
a fan of. But by who?
She hasn't announced it yet, but she announced on her social media page that some network picked it up. Red Table Talk is actually very popular because even though she put all their business out there on the show, she does actually talk about some important issues, and I'm not going to take that from her.
Maybe they'll rebrand Celeste.
But I also want to say there is never going to be a day where I look at my black man who is in the other room listening to me talk. There is never going to be a day where I look at my black man and I'm like, yes, go smack somebody in the face because they hurt my feelings. That is never gonna happen.
So in a way, and
because you're healthy.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think you're kind of agreeing with me. Now, mute yourself.
No, I'm agreeing with you. No, I'm agreeing with you most definitely, but I'm also bringing up the counterpoint. Yeah. Like my emotions agreed with what he did, but my logic and that law degree that I sit in classes for 12 hours a day to earn is like, no, baby, don't do that because that's a civil suit, a lawsuit, a criminal suit. Like we got a lot going on.
Also, it could also cost you your life. Like that's the craziest part. That moment could have went so many other directions.
If he would have attacked the right person on the wrong day, like he would have never walked up on a DMX type figure.
We know that. Yeah. That's the other part about it. We know he selected the weaker person to do that to.
Because if he would have never done that to you, because I done heard your mouth go, you'll hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, it's not gonna be pretty, and it's not, it's not gonna be fair either. But it is what it is when it comes to that type of situation. You have to be ready to do whatever. But I also wouldn't have made that joke. That's the rub. That's the imbalance. I understood why it wasn't okay, but I also understood why his action in response was completely not okay, especially in that environment. Let's get to this last question because we spent. Jay, what's going on, man? Hate you couldn't make it tonight. Let's get to this last question. Jay. Because I think this one is more so for Celeste because, again, you're kind of closer in proximity to the origins of cancel culture. And I think you'll have a good idea of this, a good response to this, because I'm more critical of the siloing. Of course, we just talked about all kinds of stuff, and I didn't get to some of my questions. But the siloing and the thing that you just mentioned about Twitter, your feed was telling you this, or your feed was indicative of that, because this is going to be more similar based on the algorithm's response to what you're going to be reactive to. So, what does cancel culture teach youth? I'll start really quickly if you don't mind, and I want to get you guys' answers real quick. What does cancel culture teach the youth? I think it muddles the opportunity to succeed, fail, better understand what is the actions of a decent human being, survive the consequences of your actions, learn from them. I think it makes you really judgy. I think it really puts you in a position. I think cancel culture puts you in a position where, as long as your algorithm, the people in your Twitter sphere, are in agreement with you, that's all you need to point fingers, judge, and cancel others outside of your sphere. And you go back there for your recharge, appreciation, your comfort. And I think that's detrimental to a healthy society. But I think that's what this cancel culture is teaching you. I want to save you for last, Celeste, because I really want to hear, because you've come up with it as more of a normality. Bob, what do you think cancel culture is teaching you?
So I think that what you just said is accurate. I think that but I think it's a lot larger than that. I think that the entire social media algorithm driven I really worry that I'm going to use the term mainstream youth. And when I say that, I'm really talking about socioeconomic mainstream, because when you are more privileged, you've got more time as parents, you've got more resources to place your children in other spaces and in other environments, and you've got the time and mind space to control their access to things and so forth, that mainstream families don't have. Mainstream families rely on screens and so forth to occupy their children, because they're too busy making enough to feed people and their families and do the things that are necessary for survival. And so we build this very judgmental, very material, very trendy, and we all know that fitting in and feeling like we have our place, we have our family, we have our home, whatever that might be. I mean, that could be a Twitterverse, that could be a gang, that could be a club at school, that could be we all wear the same clothes, we all are a part of this. But at the end of the day, that's all about superficiality and materialism and judgment, and that does not build for thoughtful, considerate, kind people. And that does worry me. And our system that we would like to rely on, whether it's public education or whatever we want to call it, is not structured and is not becoming more and more or better and better structured to contend with that and deal with that. It's becoming less and less well structured to contend with that. And we have all these alternatives that are built for other reasons, as if they're built for good reasons. And so I don't know. That worries me. And I don't want to be the old guy that says back in the day it was good.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that in terms of all of this, as you asked the question, yeah, it concerns me.
So the really quickly, the just narrow worldview is what I'm describing and what concerns me. This narrow worldview that is solidified and positions you to interpret things in such a highly concentrated way that you're missing out on so much else that's going on. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, you stop thinking. You start participating in a culture that is all about this narrow thinking and this judgment, and this materiality that is not what life's about.
Exactly. And I would say this, the cliquishness is what you experience at some levels of education, whether it's middle school, high school. You get the cliques. You understand who's the cool kids, who's the outsiders, and etc. But we are extending that past the point of maturity as a young adult into adulthood, and we're remaining in these silo cliques to a high degree, and we're being afforded, if you participate well enough, some level of influence that I don't think necessarily is healthy. So let's get us out. Oh, go ahead, Bob. You have one more thing you want to add? You sure? Okay. So let's go ahead and get us out of here with your take on what this is doing to our youth, or is it what is it teaching our youth? What is cancel culture teaching our youth?
Cancel culture, Bob is right, is one thing where you can get canceled on a trend. But I also think it teaches our youth to watch where you step before you step in a pile of sugar honey iced tea. Like for me, it's always been one of those things. Like I remember my dad's niece, one day she taught me what the F word that has 2 G's in it was. And I went home and I asked my mom and I was like, Mom, what's this word? And my mom looks at me and she's like, Celeste, we don't say that word. And I was like, okay, but what does it mean? She was like, it's a bad name that people use for gay men. And I was like, okay, but why is it bad? She said, because we don't judge anybody. And remind you, I come from a conservative Black family. But one thing that my mom and dad were very strict about is it's not your place to judge anybody because you are not God. And what I learned from that is it's not my job to voice my opinion on things that are irrelevant to me and my lifestyle. And then also what I learned is it's not my job to have an opinion on a lifestyle, especially when it doesn't harm children, animals, or another human being. And from that, I got the morals of I support all people who are doing the right thing and living for themselves. Cancel culture can be bad because it's trendy, but I also feel like it has more of a positive impact because you don't open your mouth unless you're thinking about the words that come out of it. And for me, that's something that I want this generation to learn because cancel hate was a trend, but no, don't be hateful because we've all done wrong. We've all fallen short. We've all sinned. We've all been imperfect human beings. And nobody has the right to be judged, quote unquote. But in the same breath, for some actions, you most definitely deserve to be canceled for messing with children, for being a racist, for being a xenophobe, for hating immigrants, religion, all of that, all of those big things. Yes, for promoting hate, I most definitely think you deserve the judgment of 1,000 men and God himself. But that's what I feel you deserve it for. And that's what I feel cancel culture should be saved for. That's why I don't have a big issue with cancel culture yet, because it's been applied to the things that my morals align with. Now, if we go back to the 60s and we're hating on people for being LGBTQ and being of color and all those things, use cancel culture what it was created for. Criminal acts, bad things that people should have been charged for a long time ago. But cancel culture can be bad if it's used for the wrong thing. But so far, I don't necessarily hate it for what it's been used for. It's one of those things. It's like technology. It's good when it's good, but it's bad when it's bad. I'm sorry, Danya, because I came for you on that note. Technology is the perfect analogy. But I don't mind cancel culture because I feel like it's creating a younger generation that I do not mind. I do not mind 15-year-olds being able to stand up for and being willing to stand up for their queer and trans classmates. I do not mind a 14-year-old white girl out in Montana being willing to fight for on behalf of her young Black classmate. Zoe Zephyr in the Montana House, I do not mind her having a community, being a trans elected official. Like cancel culture for me and what I have seen from it, I don't mind. Like stand up for those around you who have a limited and small voice, who are a minority. Cancel culture I have seen has been able to stand up for sexual assault victims, people of color. Cancel culture is what partially helped get George Floyd. That's the exact name. Cancel culture is what helped get George Floyd's killers convicted, because the video got posted online a few months after he was murdered and everybody was like, cancel the cop. And from that, criminal charges sprang from it. Cancel culture is what got R. Kelly canceled 20 years later after the documentary, because after the documentary, he went viral on Twitter. Cancel culture for me, make sure you are right and correct and have fact-checked your sources before you do it. But there are way more positives from cancel culture than I can say negatives right now. Of course, one day the wrong person will try to use it for the wrong reasons, because that's how life goes. That's how cycles go. But cancel culture can be used to get a lot of information out there about a lot of people before they are able to continue their harm. Like in Greensboro, for example, a sexual assaulter who's apparently done this for a long time to a lot of people, his picture got posted on Facebook. You know, Facebook is where the aunties and the cousins live. That picture got shared so much. I was like, oh, I know him because he went to the high school the same time as me. From me sharing that picture, other women are able to come forward and talk about how he tried to assault them. And then from there, I think they said the Greensboro Sheriff's Office is now investigating him because he got so many complaints that fall within the statute of limitations. So while cancel culture can be bad if sources are not fact checked, I have not yet seen it personally do more harm than good.
Bob, go ahead. You had something you wanted to throw in real quick?
Yeah. If we extend the definition of cancel culture to include the voice opportunity that Celeste has just articulated, I completely agree with her on all of that, because all of the advocacy that she just described, I think that is what's positive about the technology and the social media and the this and the that, the microphones and the phones, all of the stuff that's advocacy for the stuff she just talked about, I think is absolutely correct.
I'll say this in closing. That's the why good was in quotation marks in the title for tonight's show, because what good is I'm looking for a public good in some of this, and I think you did articulate very well what it is capable of doing, Celeste. Some of what I was getting to with the question about the youth is concerned with the view of the world that is being ascribed and impressioned upon them versus the actual functionality of the world. And I think that's for another discussion. And we may have to revisit this one, but Celeste, that means you got to say you're going to come back. So this is a word.
I'm out of classes until August. So you send me a text. I'll set an alarm in my phone and I'll be here at 6:50.
Perfect. So I don't know. I may have to put next week's topic on hold just for another conversation about this. And I'm sure we'll have some more voices and more people to contribute their ideas. That's what this space is for. I love it when we go over a little bit. Sorry, Danya, but we're out of here. And I appreciate you guys for coming and showing up. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Celeste. Danya, thanks for all that you do. Have a wonderful night, everyone. And the conversation is not